Okay. Whoa. Welcome everybody to today, Tuesday, the 13th of February. So big day tomorrow for romance. I hope you're all thinking about romance. Yes. Good, good, good. Let me just let Aaron in. So this is our first meeting of February, and we're absolutely delighted to have Alexandra Abbott here and looking forward to hearing about all these things that occur to our brain. I get very forgetful when there's so much to do, so I hope that's not indicative of where I'm going. But to start with, just to think about creating hope in the world. That's our overall mission for Rotary this year. And I think we do this pretty well at the Rotary Club of, oh, that's Marty ringing somebody, not me. So we do a good job of creating hope. And indeed, in the next year of Rotary, from July the 1st, when my gorgeous president-elect Patty Frodenberg is going to be president, the mission is magic. And of course, as all of you know, I'm very into magic. I love to run magical conversations. And what's very important about magical conversations, which we like to have every time we meet, I write about it in my book. It's conversations without judgment, conversations without anger, conversations without coercing anybody into doing something they don't want. So that's the essence of magical conversation. And that's what we like to do at the Rotary Club of Global Impact. We're delighted to have members here from different parts of the world. And we have Isaac here, who is in Bangladesh, is that right? And Shankar, who's in India, and we just got Dr. Desiree coming in from the UK. We're going to have, and Stormy, gosh, this is really good. This is very exciting. And as you all know, I love it when you put your cameras on. So if you can do that, will be great, because the recording then see your beautiful faces. Uh, and it's very important to me that we get to know each other. So just for reference point, on the second Tuesday of the month, we have an amazing speaker. We have an amazing speaker coming in today. But on the fourth Tuesday of the month, we have a members only session where we invite members to come and talk to us about their passion. And in fact, this fourth Tuesday, we actually have Storm is going to come and talk to us, and Rohal. And who is the third one, Ritu? Remind me.
Ishtiaq, you are on the spot.
Ishtiaq.
We're not going to let you slide by this time.
Excellent. Excellent.
Rohel and Stormy.
That's right. So why we do this, so Alexandra understands, we want to get to know each other because we are all on Zoom. We don't know how tall we are. We can't hug yet. Some of us have met each other. I think, Patty, you have met Marty. We have some occasions where we've actually met each other. We're just talking to Alexandra about this before we started, saying we never know how tall people are. And I believe, Alexandra, you're 6 foot. Is that correct? So I'm only 5'5", so I would be shrinking down underneath you. But we never know how tall people are. So one day we'll all get together and have a huge circle hug. Okay, that's an intention. So for now, I'd just like to say this is about magical conversation, and I'm just going to ask Patty Frodenberg to say a quick word and tell us about the 4-way test, Patty.
Oh, I love that one. Okay. Well, first of all, welcome to our presenter and guest, Alexandra. Thank you. We're excited and we welcome you in love, because that's how we do things at Rotary. And the 4-way test, I love it so much that I really apply it to every part of my life, whether it's home or business or Rotary. And that is it the truth? Is it fair? Does it build friendships and goodwill, and does it benefit all concerned? If it all checks out, then you're in my circle. If you don't follow those mottos, I'll be happy to teach you the great success and love that comes from it. It's harmony, and that's, I know, in your lane, Pauline. So I'm going to pass it back to you.
Okay, so the power of authentic harmony, which is my absolute passion, we really emulate that in this club, and we love holding hands across the world. And so I'm going to invite Ritu to introduce our amazing guest today. I've been very privileged to have a lovely conversation with Alexandra before you all arrived, so I'm very blessed. So Ritu, please invite our guest.
All right. Give me just a moment to get myself all situated, and here we are.
Are you okay, Ritu?
I am having just a little technical glitch here. Could you allow me a couple of minutes? Or you have her bio ready? I lost
I have it ready. I can do it for her.
Please, thank you, because
Okay,
my
thank you, Margie.
on me.
Yeah.
that.
Past President Marty Mangello of the Rotary Club of Global Impact. Welcome to you. Today we have Alexandra Abbott, and she's with the Alzheimer's Association, and essentially is going to speak today with us about unveiling the mysteries of memory, a clear-eyed look at Alzheimer's and dementia, something we will all face. And the question was, are you or someone you love affected by the ever-growing Alzheimer's crisis? Grappling with the complexities of such challenging conditions can be overwhelming. We hope to gain clarity and hope today, explore the depths of Alzheimer's and dementia with Alexandra, a passionate advocate armed with the latest insights and resources. And so this is why we said, don't miss your chance to change your perception and potentially the course of this disease. And we're glad to see you joining us here with Alexandra for an eye-opening event that promises to enlighten and empower. And Alexandra's dedication to enhancing the lives of those affected by Alzheimer's perfectly complements the values of the Rotary Club of Global Impact and Rotary International. Our shared commitment to community service and support through knowledge and resources, we feel, reflects the essence of our joint endeavors. And we hope to gain more information today and demonstrate solidarity with friends. We all, of course, are going to grapple with dementia shadow at one point or another. And I can honestly say, in the Presidential Center, in introducing Alexandra, President Reagan is one of our greatest examples of the fact that we will all deteriorate into dust and deal with dementia at some point or another. It's going to happen. Welcome today to Alexandra Abbott. Thank you so much for joining us. Please take it away.
Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can dive into our talk today. Let me just get to where I've got to be. All right. So today we're going to be discussing understanding Alzheimer's and dementia. This is going to be a very top-level overview of the disease and a way to better understand it as well. So we're going to be touching on a few different learning objectives. We're going to go over comparing Alzheimer's and dementia and better understanding what those terms mean and how they're different. We're going to recognize how Alzheimer's disease affects the brain. We're going to list the risk factors and talk about the stages of the disease. And we're going to end with describing how scientists are currently working to advance research, and then finally touch on the resources that we currently have available through the Alzheimer's Association. So before we begin, I wanted to touch on the impact of Alzheimer's. So I'm going to start off with some questions. If you wouldn't mind putting your answers in the chat, we will go over these together. So for our first question, approximately how many Americans are currently living with Alzheimer's? Please feel free to go ahead and put those answers in the chat. Over 3 million, more than 6 million, about 8 million, or about 11 million. I see some answers coming in the chat here. All right, I'm gonna give it. All right, currently we have more than 6 million Americans that are currently living with Alzheimer's. So now let's shift gears a little bit and let's touch on the caregivers that are caring for loved ones. So about how many Americans are providing unpaid care for people that are living with Alzheimer's or another type of dementia? Do we think it's about 8 million, over 11, over 14 million, or more than 18 million? Does anybody have any ideas about caregivers? Okay, I see lots of answers coming in, and we are at just over 11 million individuals that are caring for loved ones, friends, family, neighbors that are currently living with Alzheimer's or other types of dementia. Furthermore, I wanted to share one more statistic before we continued on. Between the year 2000 and 2019, a 19-year span, death by heart disease decreased 7.5%. Now, in that same 19-year span, death by Alzheimer's increased 145%. That statistic in and of itself really hits home for me why it's important to have educational programs in our local communities to start the conversations with our families and friends sooner than later, but also to really hit home on why early risk reduction is so important. So let's talk about Alzheimer's and dementia and define those two terms. So often we hear those terms used interchangeably, almost like they're the same thing. So I wanted to demystify that and ensure that we are all on the same page before we continue. So you'll see on this slide that we have the dementia umbrella, and that dementia is a term for loss of memory and other thinking abilities that are severe enough to interfere with daily life. So you can think of dementia like a collective term. Now, underneath that dementia umbrella falls Alzheimer's, vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, frontotemporal dementia. Others include Huntington's, Parkinson's, and the list goes on. Now, Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia. It accounts for anywhere between 60 to 80% of all cases of dementia. And some of the others there on the slide you may have heard of as well. Now, it is possible for individuals to be diagnosed with multiple types of dementia, which is referred to as mixed dementia, or dementia that comes from more than one cause. So what is happening in the brain? What biological changes are we seeing that are causing the symptoms of dementia to show in an individual? We're going to hear from one of the Alzheimer's Association experts to learn more about what we're seeing through our research.
More than 100 years ago, Dr. Alzheimer described specific changes in the brain, what we now call the formation of plaques and tangles. Alzheimer's is a progressive brain disease that's marked by these key changes and impacts memory, thinking, and behavior. The brain has three main parts: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. Each one plays a role in how the body functions. Alzheimer's disease causes nerve cells to die, which leads to brain tissue loss and causes loss of function and communication between cells. These changes can cause the symptoms of Alzheimer's, such as memory loss, behavioral issues, problems with thinking, planning, and at the end stage, swallowing.
So as you heard from Dr. Maria Carrillo, is that the first description of the disease was in 1906. But the Alzheimer's Association was founded by Jerome H. Stone in 1980 due to the fact that Alzheimer's and all types of dementia were cloaked in silence, even in our medical community. So it is the goal of the association to ensure that we have a world in the future without Alzheimer's and dementia, and we do that through our incredible research, clinical trials, and clinical studies, which we will touch on later in today's presentation. But before we get there, I wanted to talk about some risk factors that we're seeing. So I have another question here for you. What is the greatest known risk factor for Alzheimer's disease? Is it genetics, family history, or age? please feel free to go ahead and put those in the chat as well. Genetics, family history, or age. All right, I see some answers coming through. All right, so it is actually age. Age is the greatest known risk factor. After the age of 65, the risk of Alzheimer's doubles every 5 years. By the time an individual is 85 years of age, 34% of them have developed a type of dementia. Now, before I move on to the next slide, actually, I wanted to discuss family history. So family history also is a component of a risk factor. And what we're looking for here is a first-degree relative. So a parent or a sibling that has developed a type of dementia. That will increase an individual's risk, but it does not guarantee they will develop the disease. More family members that are diagnosed does further increase an individual's risk, but again, it is not a deterministic quality. Now, when we look at that genetic component a little bit deeper, we're looking for two specific types of genes. We're looking for risk genes or deterministic genes. When we look a little bit deeper at risk genes, we're talking about genes such as the APOE-4 gene. If an individual goes through genetic testing and they find that they are a carrier of the APOE-4 gene, their risk increases anywhere from 15 to 25% to develop a type of dementia over the course of their life. Now, if we switch gears and we look at those deterministic genes, the deterministic genes are just that. They determine that an individual will develop dementia over the course of their life. However, I want to put everyone's mind at ease when I talk about these genetic components. The deterministic gene that we just discussed affects less than 1% of the entire world population. So the genetic component on the deterministic side is extremely rare. Now, it is worth noting here that there is a fourth risk factor. In 2019, a study by Mayo Clinic found that anywhere from 34% to 40% of individuals that have developed dementia over the course of their life was due to modifiable life factors. Now, what do I mean by modifiable life factors? Well, we know that family history and genetics are not modifiable. We cannot change those factors about the story of our health. However, lifestyle factors can be changed. So what I mean by that is the quality of our sleep, not smoking, taking care of our mental health and our stress levels, practicing self-care, keeping our bodies moving, whether that means just adding a little more movement into our daily routines or having a dance party with our kids. Eating healthy, so thinking about what types of foods can I bring into my diet to ensure that I'm fueling my brain and body. Challenging our brains. So for those of you that might love some word searches or crossword puzzles, I urge you to change it up, try something new, something that is challenging for you, and try to challenge your brain every day, whether that means you become a lifelong learner or you volunteer for a new organization. And finally, socialization. It is so important to stay well connected with our family, friends, loved ones, and in our local communities. So all of those lifestyle factors roll up into that fourth risk factor. It's imperative to ensure that we're keeping our cardiovascular health in balance because our cardiovascular health directly impacts our brain health. Anywhere from 20 to 25% of all of the blood pumped by our heart directly impacts our brain. So it is important to keep our bodies moving and keep our cardiovascular health in balance. Now let's look at some statistics that we're seeing come through research. You'll see here that there are populations that are at a higher risk based on our research. African Americans are about twice as likely as white Americans to develop Alzheimer's or another type of dementia. Hispanic and Latino individuals are 1.5 times more likely to develop the disease. And almost 2/3 of Americans that are living with Alzheimer's are women. Now, when I say all of these statistics, it's unfortunate that we don't currently understand why we're seeing such stark differences come through in our research. When we look at the statistic regarding women, longevity can only partially explain the difference that we're seeing come through in our research. And when we look at the differences in ethnicity, population health is only a small factor in that. So we are currently working every day in our clinical trials, clinical studies, and research efforts to better understand the differences that we're seeing come through our research to ensure that when we continue to work for a treatment, a cure, and a preventative, that it will encompass everybody that needs it. Now let's touch on some of the stages of Alzheimer's. Now on this slide, you'll see the 3 different colors of the Alzheimer's disease continuum. So let's take a moment to talk about that asymptomatic stage. The term asymptomatic means that an individual is not showing symptoms. However, the interesting thing about this asymptomatic stage is that individuals actually can live in the asymptomatic stage where there are biological changes happening in somebody's brain, but no symptoms on the outside for up to a decade. So let me say that again. Individuals can live with changes happening in their brain due to Alzheimer's for up to a decade without showing symptoms. So this is why it's so important to have a way to test for the disease before there are symptoms. Now, as we move to that yellow part of the arrow, you'll see MCI due to Alzheimer's disease. And for those of you that may not be familiar with MCI, MCI stands for mild cognitive impairment. Now, when we talk about mild cognitive impairment is not a deterministic quality to develop into Alzheimer's. So what I mean by that is there are some individuals that are diagnosed with MCI and never progress any further regarding their cognitive decline. Some individuals remain in cognitive impairment and don't develop the early stages of Alzheimer's due to dementia. Now, other individuals, that is the beginning of going into the stages of dementia. So as we move into that purple arrow, you'll see that it's broken down further into 3 separate stages. Now, it's important to note before I talk about these stages that although it looks as though you can put somebody in a neat little box and say, this is mild stage or this is moderate stage, that's not the case when it comes to dementia. Dementia is a disease that ebbs and flows through an individual because, like the disease and our brain, it is variable. There might be some days where an individual seems as though they might be in the mild stage. And then the next day, they might seem as though they're in the moderate stage. But there's also cases where individuals might have some abilities that are mild and some abilities that are moderate. So let's take, for example, in that mild stage, what are some things we might see there? You'll see on the slide that it typically involves symptoms that interfere with some daily activities. So you might see very minute changes in an individual. So let's take communication for an example. You might see that an individual loses their train of thought throughout conversation as they're trying to find a specific word, or you may see some creative word building. And what I mean by that is instead of referring to this as a watch, somebody might refer to it as a hand clock, where realistically, a hand clock makes sense, but they were unable to find the word watch. Now, as we move into that moderate stage, you'll see more pronounced symptoms that interfere with daily life. Now, as we move to this moderate stage, you may see more pronounced changes in communication as well. So let's take for a second, when I was chatting with Dr. Pauline at the beginning, it was a very back and forth conversation. I talk, you talk, I talk, you talk. Now imagine if I was in the early or moderate stages of the disease and I needed 5, 7, maybe even 10 seconds to process what was said to me and then answer the question. Whoever I'm speaking to may be like, did you hear me? You know, they may feel a little awkward, and that increases the individual's social anxiety as well. So you may see an individual's comfort zone shrink in a little bit as they get used to the changes that they are seeing in themselves. You may see increased anxiety and agitation in an individual as well, and they may rely on loved ones, friends, or family to help them throughout their daily routines. Now, as we move to that severe stage, you'll see symptoms that interfere with most daily activities. In the severe stage, individuals typically require round-the-clock care. This is where caregivers that are caring for loved ones at home often turn to home care agencies to help, or even hospice and palliative care to help. At that stage, many times individuals are unable to communicate. However, it's important to know that regardless of where an individual is in the stages in the course of this disease, they are still an adult and they still deserve respect and dignity. So there are beautiful ways to connect with an individual in that severe stage, whether it's through music, through hand massages with scented lotion, through cooking or baking some cookies and just smelling the cookies fill the air. There's many different ways to connect with loved ones, regardless of where they are in the stages of the disease. Now let's take a moment to talk about some FDA-approved treatments. Now, in one of the videos, you heard that the first description of the disease was in 1906. Now, it wasn't until 1996 that we had the first medication on the market that treated the symptoms of the disease. So that is a 90-year span between the first description and a medication on the market to help families. Now, the medications that were on the market between 1996 and 2014 solely treated the symptoms of the disease. They did not treat the progression or the course of the disease in any way, shape, or form. Now, in 2021, we had a huge breakthrough in our era of treatment, and we found anti-amyloid medications that directly impacted the amyloid plaques in the brain, the buildup of the amyloid protein in the brain. These medications are given intravenously, and there are currently 2 medications on the market now. Now, it's important to note that these medications still are not a cure or a preventative or a full treatment. These medications simply slow the progression of the disease down in order to give individuals more time with their families, friends, and loved ones, and to make more choices about their future care continuum. We're going to hear a few videos next about advancing Alzheimer's research.
This is an incredibly exciting time in Alzheimer's and dementia research. The advancements that we've made in the last decade to understand the disease as a continuum, meaning that the biological changes are starting a decade or more before someone is experiencing the changes in the memory and thinking. This sets the stage for possible prevention. The idea that when we have the tools to identify those individuals at the earliest time point, and when we have the interventions to target individuals at that earliest time point, we can intervene to stop or slow the progression of the disease before an individual loses their memories.
Growing evidence indicates that people can reduce their risk of cognitive decline by adopting key lifestyle habits. More and more research shows that factors like exercise, nutrition, and aggressive management of cardiovascular risk factors may impact our ability to slow cognitive decline as we age. And through current studies, we're exploring how certain lifestyle factors may even reduce the risk of developing Alzheimer's and dementia.
A lot of hope does come from the Alzheimer's Association, all the research that is being done. Even though there is not a cure today for the disease, I know in my heart there is going to be a cure one day. And I know we're getting closer for that cure. Because even if you fail in a research study, you learn from that failure in the research study. That failure always brings progression.
And one final video before we touch on the resources.
It's nice to see the association spearheading in many ways the emphasis on getting the money at the federal level and at the private sector to get the research done so that someday there will be an effective treatment, hopefully cure, hopefully prevention.
All right, so let's go ahead and touch on the resources that we have available through the Alzheimer's Association. So that first resource up there, that 800 number, is my favorite one to share with the community. And there's a lot of reasons for that. So you can call this phone number if you just have general questions about the disease, such as, I want to learn more about the 10 signs, or I'm going to the doctor with a loved one. What are some questions that I should be asking my doctor about cognition and cognitive abilities? You can also reach out to that helpline phone number for emotional support. So if you or a loved one was recently diagnosed and you're struggling to come to terms with the diagnosis, you can reach out for that emotional support. Now, finally, if you are a caregiver or if you know somebody who is a caregiver, you can reach out for crisis de-escalation. So for example, let's say it's 2 in the morning and your loved one wakes up screaming, and you look at the situation and you think it's not available for 911, or it's not appropriate for 911, and it's not appropriate for the ER. What do I do? You can call our helpline for crisis de-escalation tips, tools, and resources. This helpline is 24/7, 365, and it is available in 200 plus languages. So it is a phenomenal resource to know. Even if you don't need it right now, there may be a friend, a family member, or a neighbor who needs this. You can also find additional resources at alz.org. We have a plethora of resources available for individuals, whether that's going to our caregiver center and learning more about caregiving, or better understanding the treatment options that are available currently. You can explore that at your own pace at alz.org. And finally, for those of you that are here in the US, we utilize alz.org/CRF. CRF stands for Community Resource Finder. Now, through our Community Resource Finder that's in partnership with AARP, you can find support groups nearby you, local resources near you, and more education programs just like this one near you, all via your zip code. So they are phenomenal resources to know and to share with those who may need it the most. I am going to go ahead and bypass these last 3 videos and open the floor for any questions.
Fantastic information, Alexandra. That is amazing. Absolutely, and so beautifully presented and accurate. And it's a subject that is obviously dear to everybody's hearts. Especially for me, at a mature age, and my husband's just 80, and also my first husband actually died of Alzheimer's. So it's a very personal issue for me. I think you gave us so much hope. This is amazing. So questions here for you. Ritu, I think you were first, and then Patty, and then Dr. Mike. Ritu?
Yes. So, Alexandra, thank you so much. This was very beautifully presented and such an valuable information you shared. I have a few things to say. I recently participated in Rutgers Medical University on a research. They had funding to research on a ethnic communities, the impact of Alzheimer's and aging. So I just happened to participate as a volunteer and participated in the study. So it was fascinating. I'm a very curious person. So I asked a ton of questions to the doctors as well as the research staff, the MRI people. 300 different images of the brain scan, even though they couldn't answer my questions. But out of curiosity and just being an informed consumer, there's a lot of learning here. Because I have come across many of in my acquaintance connections, people whose family member or known people who went into Alzheimer situations and rapid decline or slow decline. So with that said, what was fascinating to find when people have close bond with the families, and so some research studies have shown the impact of Alzheimer is kind of paced. It's not as rapid. Anyway, that was just kind of a finding, but as you have mentioned, just to have activities, diet, and all combination. One thing that stood out for me, and I also belong to a humanitarian society. The word dementia, the origin of the word dementia, they had shown some videos where the patients were kept in care facilities and mostly not very responsive. But when some family members shared their history and affiliation with music, playing of some old songs and music, and there was an instant reaction to this person sitting on his wheelchair. It's just so fascinating when we come across what you have shared. Sometime small efforts made consistently can be very helpful, not only personal care, but also the care of the family members. So I don't have per se a question, but I was so touched and wanted to share what I personally had experienced in watching some people decline.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And music is such a powerful way to connect with individuals who are navigating this disease. And there's some other great ways to connect and really focus on effective communication strategies with loved ones. So if you know somebody who's in those later stages, a beautiful way to connect is through the five senses. So like I mentioned, a hand massage with scented lotion, it's bringing in the sense of touch and smell. Or sitting outside and just listening to the birds sing and feeling the sun on your skin. There's beautiful ways to connect with somebody, but it's also important to be aware of your nonverbal communication. If you walk into a room with your arms crossed, you might come across with a different emotion than if you walk in and gently put your hand on somebody's arm and say, "Hi, Dad, it's your daughter, Alexandra." So there's beautiful ways to connect with people throughout the course of the disease, and I appreciate you sharing your insight on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra. Let's go to Patty. Patty, you have a question?
Well, my question kind of parlays into what was shared. So my question was, are there any pivotal milestones as in using music for a resource? Because I recently read an article for a news segment I host, and it was provided by the Good News Network. .org, and it was actual clinical studies showing that it's a phenomenon. However, music, for some reason, the patient, or rather the person with the disease of Alzheimer's, somehow remembers lyrics. Let's use Tony Bennett, for example. So they've done studies, clinical trials and research. Again, I don't have the article in front of me. I was trying to like multitask, but nonetheless, you might be able to provide us with that information. Are you guys working on that? Are you actually actively using it as a resource? That's my question, but you guys kind of grazed over it.
Patty, that's a great question. And I am really glad that we're talking about the subject of music in memories. Like I said, it's a very powerful thing that we're seeing come forward in our research. Now, when it comes to exact Alzheimer's Association research studies, we actually are funding over 1,000 research studies currently, with $1 billion put into the research itself. So I'm not sure if the association is spearheading any specific research surrounding the idea of music in memories. However, there has been a lot of past research about, like you said, the phenomenon that we're seeing. Now, when we look at Alzheimer's and we think about some of those early warning signs, a lot of times it's for getting recently learned information as a warning sign. So we see that a lot of those long-term memories are preserved for much of the disease. However, that is different for every individual. So that's just something to keep in mind as we look at these music studies. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and I'm glad to hear that as a community, we're talking about it.
That's fantastic. And before I go to Dr. Mike, my husband has just been 80 last week. He can remember all the songs for about 50 years, but he's very, very forgetful on words that he knows, which are not music. So he can totally be part of your research. The music is keeping his brain alive, which is fantastic. Dr. Mike.
Yes, thank you. Outstanding presentation. I want to shift gears here for a moment. Those that know me, my research is in genetics, but in the field of animalia. So I was interested and of awe on the statistical data that you provided. And of course, I want to ask the question, do you find us going in the form of genetics as far as research leading the way in genetics and solving the helix? Isn't that really a good way of tracking the future in our health and the fight against Alzheimer's? And that is my question. And thank you once again for your presentation. And I'll step to the side.
That's a fabulous question, and you are correct. Genetics is a huge part of the research, especially when it comes to better understanding the differences that we're seeing come forward. For example, let's take for a moment women accounting for 2/3 of all Americans that are living with Alzheimer's. So out of the 6 million Americans, 4 million are women that are living with Alzheimer's. So like I said, longevity can only partially explain that difference. So is there a genetic component? What are we going to see in the future of research regarding genetics? So we do have studies surrounding genetics to better understand some of the differences that we're seeing come forward in our research. That's a great question, and I am hopeful that I'll be able to share more information in the coming years. For example, we do have our Alzheimer's International Conference every year, annually held in July. This year it was in Amsterdam, and we gather 800 to 900 of the world's best dementia researchers. And at this, the AAIC this past year in July, we actually had promising research come forward in the idea of a blood test to help with diagnostics. So there is exciting news coming around the corner. We are in the era of treatment, and I truly hope that someday we will better understand the beginning stages of this disease to work towards a cure.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alexandra. Marty, you have your hand up. Marty is posting all sorts of good things in the chat, so keep an eye on the chat.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Alexandra if she had a favorite food that helps with Alzheimer's. I know a lot of people say salmon. Our daughter would say salmon. But did you have a favorite food that helps prevent Alzheimer's or inhibit it?
That's a great question. And eating healthy is a large part of fueling our bodies and our brains properly. There's two different types of, well, there's multiple types of diets that can be beneficial for a healthy lifestyle. And two that are most common is the DASH diet, dietary approaches to stop hypertension, and the Mediterranean diet, both which focus on those fish and poultry and all of that. But the important thing is the idea of what can I add into my meals? So although I don't have a favorite food that can help in that preventative strategy, I utilize this thing called a weekly wild card. And what we do with our weekly wild card is every week when we go to the grocery store, we try to find one healthy thing, typically one fruit or vegetable, that we either haven't cooked with in a while or that we've never tried. And we bring it home and try a new recipe with our new ingredient. Not only does that challenge my brain to try a new recipe, it's integrating healthy foods and increasing my socialization by spending time with others while I'm cooking.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'd like to ask a question, kind of personal as well, but is the test easy? Is it advisable to get somebody who, like my husband, and says, oh, he's forgetting words? Should he go and get a test? Does that help people or not help people?
Are you referring to genetic testing?
I don't know. He's with the VA, and we asked his primary care to organize some tests, but they didn't come through. And then I asked him, and he said, oh, I don't want to go and do it now. How do you deal with the psychology of not wanting to know?
At the Alzheimer's Association, we say that early detection is paramount. So with the fear behind not wanting to get an assessment or the statement of saying, I don't want to go, there's a lot of fear behind that. There's a lot of emotions behind that because a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or any type of dementia is a very scary diagnosis for individuals to receive. So it's important that anybody that's in their mid-60s to utilize your insurance to ensure you're getting a cognitive assessment sooner than later, even if that's just a baseline cognitive assessment. And what I mean by that is you might not need to get another one for 5, 10, 7 years, something like that. But if there is a difference when you take that assessment again, they can look back and say, okay, there is a change. Let's explore this a little bit more. Or there isn't a change, so let's explore your medications. Let's explore the quality of your sleep and your mental health, your levels of depression. All of those factors correlate to that cognitive fog and just kind of feeling bogged down.
Yes. So it sounds like, and your presentation is fantastic, that it's very hopeful for people. There's hope that we can change the state of, not cure Alzheimer's, but we can increase our capacity to deal with it.
This is a very exciting time in Alzheimer's research, Alzheimer's and dementia research. We have made more progress in the past 5 years than we ever could have imagined, and I have a feeling it's just going to skyrocket from here.
That's fantastic. So are there any other questions? Anybody else want to ask a question or?
This is Doris Elaine.
Hi.
Hi, Miss Abbott. I recently lost my 99-year-old mother to Alzheimer's.
I'm so sorry.
It was beautiful time that I spent with her. Your presentation is wonderful. It's great. And I also prepared a presentation to present to individuals in my community and when I travel, because it's very important that people understand the disease, and it is a disease. My grandmother, my mother's mother, transitioned at the age of 77. My mother transitioned 22 years later. By caring for her, I understood that her diet was very important, physical activity. Some days she would remember practically everything.
Mhm.
We would bring her great granddaughter over a baby, and she talked to the baby. And one day she told the baby, she says, I'm old now and I can't take care of you, so your mom has to do that. But I tried to keep her engaged. She loved to sing. She loved to sing. So I would go and to the bedroom when she was in bed. And as you said, I would take her by the hand, caress her, and we would sing together. I asked her questions regarding her childhood, things that occurred, and she could easily answer. I am currently writing a book on my mother's Alzheimer's journey. Perhaps it can help another caretaker or individuals in their journey. And it doesn't have to be difficult. I noticed one thing about my mother. You could not disagree with her with anything.
Mhm.
She did not want to lose control. So whatever she said, I agreed with her. But I appreciate all the work that the Alzheimer's Association does. And I'm waiting for that research because, as Marty always mentioned, I think I'm the oldest member. So I'm getting there. And since I do have a family history of Alzheimer's, my 94-year-old aunt is beginning to suffer with Alzheimer's. And I don't know if I will develop the disease. I've asked my doctor, and he said, no, you're very sharp. But as you said, it could be developing in the background without my fully realizing it. Do I need to be tested?
Well, first, let me just say, Doris, thank you for sharing your story, not only with me and everybody on this call and that's going to watch this recording, but also with the world through your writing. I think that is such a beautiful thing to do, and it speaks volumes about who you are as a person. But second, I do think that it's important to have cognitive assessments starting at the age of 65, even if it's every 5 years or so. I have urged my own parents to ensure that they're utilizing their Medicare annual wellness exams to get those cognitive assessments done that are a part of those annual wellness exams. So I highly recommend requesting a cognitive assessment. Like I said, even if it's just a baseline assessment for now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Doris Lane. That was beautiful to share. I think We'll have to compare notes on age, but I think you and I are the oldest here. But I think that having the test, look, I'll go and get the test if you go and get the test, Doris, okay? And we'll compare notes and share it with the club. But Alexandra, if there aren't any more questions, I'm just going to, have you got a new question, Patty, or is that an old hand up there? Okay. I'm watching the
I'm in
screen.
on the testing. I'm in.
Are you there, Mike? Dr. Mike?
Yes,
Oh,
I'm sorry to barge. I'm sorry to barge it. I'm in on the testing. I'll go get tested. I'll get back with the results.
okay.
All right.
We'll have a ruse session on our results.
Absolutely. All right.
I've got a hand up. I've got a hand up for Aaron. Last question. Are you there, Aaron? Yeah. You're on mute.
Sorry, I just had some updates after questions. If everybody's done asking questions about a couple club projects that we were talking about.
Okay, in a minute. Hang on, Aaron.
Yeah.
I just want to say a real big thank you to Alexandra before we go into some little bit of our business. But I really, really appreciate you. And I know that Alexandra went to a Rotary meeting locally this morning where she lives. And I'm encouraging her to become a Rotarian, aren't we all? Yes, please come a Rotarian, either a local club or join us. But it's been an absolute delight, and we definitely will review our scores and get you to come back and talk to us about the scores.
Thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of you for your time today.
Thank you. And just do stay with us if you'd like. We're just going to do a little bit of a wrap. Aaron's going to talk about a project or two, and the other, is Shankar still here? Shankar's here. I would like Shankar just to talk a little bit about what we want to do with the passion projects on the 4th Tuesday. So,
Sure.
Aaron, you just talk quickly about the 2 projects that we have.
Okay, so I have an update on Dare to Spare. It's been kind of slow progress. There's a lot of other stuff going on. So what we're going to do with anybody that has or collected some donations, we're going to mail those donations to a Ukrainian church in New York. We have a gentleman that's going to gift $1,000 to the church. They are going to package our aid and with some of their aid in a shipping container and send it over there. And then our partner on the ground, Mark Luther, will distribute it. Moving on to the benefit that Anya is putting on for children at the Rotary Club in Milwaukee, or actually the benefit is going to be in Madison, Wisconsin. I have a meeting set up for, February 20th with the president of a Rotary Club in Italy, who's on the board of several foundations. They have some gift money that can be allocated to several different projects. So we're going to talk to him about that. And I also have a tentative meeting with the secretary at Rotary International to talk about how we can help Chile. So I don't know if you guys know what's going on down there, but there's some fires and it's a very horrible situation. There's been almost a complete media blackout and they are blocking foreign aid. And I also reached out to the president in Santiago. Unfortunately, the phone just keeps ringing, so I'm going to keep pressing on that issue. And that's all I have for now.
Thank you, Aaron. That's fantastic. And it's so important. We have a member of our club, Carolina, who is in Santiago. Isn't that right? And so she's in the middle of these terrible fires. And we send our prayers to her. So I'm just going to ask Shankar to do a couple of minutes on what we hope to do for the passion projects. Shankar.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alexandra. It's so powerful what you shared today. And I had some thoughts about it, which I might want to connect with you separately because I really follow the Indian tradition of yoga. And I also believe that there is, from the standpoint for everybody talking, I also very positive in terms of the the impact that can be created out of research. Having said that, I was also trying to understand what is called epigenetics, which is supposedly a new form of understanding. So you mentioned genetics, you mentioned the rest of them, and also just for us to understand there are things that we follow in terms of the food habits, the sun and the light and everything else that in India is all about Ayurveda, which is beyond the body itself. Where we expose ourselves has a lot of impact on our life. That's something that I am very keen to understand. Probably I'll bring it at some point. Thank you so much. Besides that, I've been talking to Dr. Pauline, and the next Tuesday, what we plan to do is to bring the global impact of the Rotary Club really impactful in terms of how we will have such passion projects and how are we going to make it so practical. That's where our relationship with each other matters so much, that we are forming something called the buddy system, where each of these programs and projects, like the one Alexandra brought, we want to make sure that's a continuous, ongoing relationship being built around the community, locally and internationally, for which we will format it in ways by which what I call as communication, collaboration, and leadership. Because I really believe that when humans come together, something magical turns out of that relationship. I heard a great man say, when the distance between humans disappear, God appears. So Rotary Club is greatly aligned to what Alexandra is saying and all about the dementia. I'll also suggest, there's a book called the Ikigai, and I was reading a bit on that. And they say when somebody has got a very powerful purpose, Alzheimer's and those kind of things kind of sidestep, because there is this dance, an eternal dance of having meaning in life and having not so much meaning. It's a limitation of the mind, but it's a good idea to cultivate purposeful living, which is what we are trying to establish at Rotary, to have passion projects. When one is so passionate, everything else sidesteps. I think this is all psychological and philosophical, what I'm saying, but it's a good thing. So Dr. Pauline and I have been discussing how we will bring in our project. She's got a project which I'm helping to bring it to India, which is called the Entrepreneurology, for which we will bring an Entrepreneurs Institute and see how we can take that forward. And I'm also studying how to award people, which is Dr. Pauline's project of awarding people with doctorate, PhD in, not in the theory of management, but actually applied management and applied businesses, and how that can be validated and a doctorate awarded. Besides that, Pauline, is there something else that you would like to add?
No, that's absolutely fine. So thank you, Shankar. So again, thank you to everybody for being here today. We've come up to time. Thank you, Alexandra. You've given us so much information, so much to think about. And we've now got Doris Elaine, myself, and Dr. Mike. We're all going to go and get tested. And I'll get my husband to come with me. And keep him playing music. And when we meet next time, all of you, on our 4th Tuesday, Isiak and Stormy and Rohal will be sharing what they're passionate about, and Shankar and I will talk about how we organize the buddying and how we look at all the passion projects we've been sharing over the last 5 months, 6 months, that we can bring some energy to this in a practical way. So it's been a really, really wonderful meeting. You've really made us think, Alexandra. We hope that you join a local Rotary Club or our club, whichever feels right. But know that when you're a Rotarian, you can go to any local club you want by asking if I can turn up, please, I'm a Rotarian. I believe that is true, Marty. And this is something we all need to do in our local areas. I've been encouraging those of you who are in any country to go and say hi to your local clubs and say, yes, we're part of the Rotary Club of Global Impact, and we are here to serve as all of Rotarians are. Oh, so with that said, I want to thank Ritu as well for organizing you to be here with us, Alexandra. And we all want to wish you a wonderful holiday, Ritu, and make sure that you totally relax and chill out. We want stories from the massage table. And we're looking forward to hearing from you, Isiak, when you come on the next time. So all of you, fantastic. Thank you, Aaron. You are doing some amazing projects there. Thank you, Marty, for always rescuing us when the Zoom link isn't working and saving us on the website. And and Patty and Doris and everybody here. Thank you, all of you, for being here. And I will be sharing the recording on the YouTube channel. I'll send you the link, Alexandra. And all of you have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Take care, guys. Good night.
Bye.
Take care.